about the U.S. justice system. Widespread demonstrations are continuing for yet another night. The fury continues over grand jury decisions not to indict white police officers who killed unarmed black men. On Monday night, police in California arrested scores of protesters who shut down a major freeway, and the so-called die-in demonstrations were used in many other locations. Here in New York City, basketball stars joined the protests. Cleveland Cavaliers forward LeBron James and several other players wore T-shirts with the message, "I can't breathe," which were the last words of Eric Garner. Organizers called for a, quote, week of outrage that will lead to massive demonstrations on Saturday in New York and Washington, D.C. Meanwhile, the National Urban League is proposing a 10-point initiative that it calls the Journey to Justice Plan. It recommends policing reforms that would lead to more accountability. The recommendations include the use of body and dashboard cameras, as well as comprehensive retraining of police officers. The proposal also addresses an issue at the root of these protests. It recommends the appointment of special prosecutors to investigate police misconduct. Marc Morial is the president and CEO of the National Urban League, and he's here in our New York studios. Marc, it's good to see you.
Thank you, Debbie.
Thanks
good
for
to be with
in.
you.
I know this is a very, very busy time, and it's an important time in this intersection of history. You've come up with this 10-point plan, this initiative, the Journey to Justice, and I want to pull out just a few of them,
Certainly.
talk about them more specifically. And let's start with body cams and dashboard cams, because that really has been top of the list of conversation when these non-indictments have come out. So how will having the cameras help in situations, for instance, like Eric Garner, where there was a third-party video of the incident, but still no indictment?
This is why body cameras and dashboard cameras by themselves are not a panacea, not a fix, and why so much outrage has been expressed all over the world about the non-indictment of Eric Garner, because common sense and one's own plain eyes give you a sense of what happened, that Eric Garner was not at all resisting arrest, and the chokehold utilized on him was, in fact, excessive force. That's what the court of public opinion says, and that's why many, many people, me included, feels there should have been an indictment, that the probable cause standard was met. The body cams and the dash cams would be a tool of accountability, and I think would be a step of how we use 21st century technology to reform policing.
And the truth is, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation were it not for that video that was taken.
It would be a finger-pointing exercise of he said, she said, and trying to reconstruct the incident after it happened.
All right, let's go to one of your other recommendations. This is number 4 on your list, comprehensive retraining of all police officers. What kind of retraining do you have in mind?
So New York, indispensable to this is really a change or a reform in how we police. We've got to reform the broken windows theory of policing, the war on drugs policing, which put heavy, heavy emphasis on lots of arrests for very small offenses, to a proactive community policing approach. It's like the approach we employed when I was mayor of New Orleans. It worked. It brought down crime. It improved relationships between the police and the community. It reduced civil rights complaints. So the idea of retraining is a new approach to policing, and then a retraining of officers as to how that approach would work in a given city. Here in New York, you've seen the commissioner take the first step in announcing retraining of all of his officers. So this is indispensable. So if we're going to re-engage or change the engagement relationship between police and the community, we've got to teach, train, coach, help the officer on the street, the officer on the beat, understand what that means.
And that seems, Marc, to go hand in hand with the next initiative, and that is a review and strengthening of police hiring standards. Unpack that a little bit.
So 2 examples in Cleveland with the Tamir Rice very tragic incident. It appears as though the offending officer there had been a police officer in another department that got bad marks. How did that sift through? How did that get through the hiring process at the Cleveland Police Department? Every department in the country needs to review its hiring standard. Let's look at the incident here in New York City. The offending choking officer It is suggested in the media, and the media reported that he was involved in 2 prior incidents which provoked lawsuits against the New York City of New York and the New York Police Department. Now, hiring standards would not have kept that out, but it's an example. These are examples of why every department should review its hiring standards, because the history shows that a small number of officers create, and provoke most of the complaints.
How much concern do you have in terms of potential discrimination in hiring practices? For instance, in Ferguson, Missouri, a community that's almost 70% black had only 3 black police officers on their police force of more than 50.
A department that is so misaligned with the community it serves is a department that's going to have problems. History shows that a department wants the best officers, and it also wants a department, and these two go hand in hand, Debbie, a department that matches the makeup of a community, that looks like a community, because officers understanding, knowing, trusting a community is important to the community knowing, understanding, and trusting officers. The two go hand in hand.
What do you plan on doing with these recommendations?
This plan, we hope that as this activism, as this spirit of protest takes place around the country, that people are going to embrace the idea that this is a moment for not only awareness, but a moment for change. We're certainly going to share these recommendations with the President's Task Force headed by Commissioner Ramsey of Philadelphia and former Assistant Attorney General Laurie Robinson. But we're going to share this with mayors, city council members, activists around the country, because what my experience in New Orleans as mayor a decade or so ago proved is that you can bring about change, keep a community safe, and improve relationships between a community and the police. And that's the point.
That is the nut of it, and it bears mentioning that you are involved in planning a march in Washington, D.C. this Saturday, December 13th.
Reverend Al Sharpton and the National Action Network have convened many of us, and we'll be in Washington to continue with the peaceful approach to expressing outrage around these incidents, but also to promote the idea that we need change.
All right, Marc Morial, come back anytime.
We will.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Debbie.